It's been said that indigenous communities are on the front line of climate change. What does that mean? From the Caribbean to the Arctic, the lives of Native people are changing in a dramatic fashion. I'm Mark Trahant, and this is Wassaja, the untold stories of the indigenous Americas. Last year was a devastating hurricane season, one of the worst ever. But this season could even be more troubling. Researchers at Colorado State University predict at least 7 hurricanes this summer. They peg the odds at 52% for at least one major hurricane landing in the Caribbean. That's exactly what happened in Dominica. Hurricane Maria was at full strength when it hit the island. We're here on the Atlantic coast of the Kalinago territory. This is a beautiful spot, and why not? We're in the Caribbean on the nature island of Dominica. The territory needs jobs, so it was a perfect match. You could sell traditional goods such as baskets and other things, bringing tourists and new money to the territory. Well, that happened. Tourism was on the rise. Then Hurricane Maria hit, and all of that was flattened. The jobs are kind of like that cottage.
It's all I ever think about. Now I look into the sky.
The Kalinago people used to be known as the Caribs. It was one of the first tribes to encounter Columbus some 5 centuries ago. The Kalinagos were a source of resistance throughout the Caribbean. The Spanish ships had a hard time landing because the volley from Kalinago arrows were so fierce. But eventually, the Kalinago, like tribes in North America, faced wave after wave of colonialism. The Spanish, the French, the British, and they pushed the Kalinago to a corner of their own homeland, where they remain today, on Kalinago territory. The Kalinago have faced many challenges, and now climate change is perhaps their greatest threat. Hurricane Maria started as a tropical storm on September 16, 2017. 2 days later, it was the strongest hurricane on record when it landed on the Caribbean island nation of Dominica. We start our story at a lodge. It's owned by Niche Abu, a member of the Kalinago Tribal Council and an entrepreneur. He built cabins for tourists. He created jobs.
Two-day expedition.
Will this be rebuilt?
Yes, we think it will be rebuilt. You know, just the way it was, with
Right.
the 2 little bedrooms in the back, and the entrance of the house at the time was this way. And but the kitchen was still in the same place, the kitchen, and but very simple, very, you know, people live very simple lives here, and it's pretty much gone. I'm Nichi Abu, born in the Kalinago territory, right here, Dominican. This is my grandmother's house. That's where I was born. So my grandmother, 2 uncles, my mom, a couple cousins, we all lived here. Yvonne and I left our home and decided to come out to see what was happening with our cottages and to see what was happening with the house. And we got to about this point and looked, and it was just a pile of rubble. The wind had shifted and it started blowing and howling, and so we had to run out of here back to the house. Once the winds had subsided, my uncle, his wife, and his 2 grandchildren walked into the door, wet, trembling, crying. The entire house had collapsed over them, and they were under the bed with a mattress on top of the bed, and that's where they rode out the entire storm. And so they dogged themselves out of it. And when we came, we had a light and we had flashed, and they had seen our light flashing, and so they knew there were people around. So as soon as the winds had subsided, they crawled out of there and came to the house and spent the rest of the night of the, you know, we gave them some clothes and something warm to drink. And but yeah, it was a pretty traumatic and emotional moment for my uncle and his wife.
My name is Gerard Langlaise, and better known as Mabrika to the community. I experienced Hurricane David. That was in 1979, and when David was approaching, I was a young boy at that time, and we did not know exactly what a hurricane was like. So, and after experiencing Hurricane David, it was, something that I had in my mind, that a hurricane was very destructive. But this hurricane, the information we got is that it was like a category 1. It was maybe like Marilyn. And then all of a sudden it was a category 2. It skipped 4, and then from 3 jumped to 6. it was past 5. All the spirits of the ancestors was in that storm. You could hear people talking, you could hear people screaming, you could hear all kind of different songs in that storm. Debris was flying everywhere, houses were being broken, and it was like some sort of a nuclear bomb.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration defines a Category 5 storm as catastrophic because most of the framed homes will be destroyed with total roof failure and wall collapse. Fallen trees and power poles will isolate residential areas. Power outages will last for weeks to possibly months, where most of the area will be uninhabitable.
I'm Yvonne, born in Roseau, of Kalinago heritage, my grandparents of Kalinago heritage. And initially we figured because we were on the Atlantic coast that we really got the brunt of it. We had initially, I think, Louis' uncle who lived here, he was expecting a Category 2 hurricane, otherwise they would not have stayed here. My mom and my sister and my son were on the other side of the island, and we decided we needed to go to check on them. Obviously the roads were blocked, so you couldn't drive. The phones were down, so you couldn't communicate. Communication was non-existent. So we decided to walk. I wasn't worried about the distance. It really was just a challenge of getting through the landslides and the trees, and it was just a mess, walking through. It took us about 10 hours, but our mission was accomplished. We found everybody alive, and the more we walked, the more we realized that the entire island was completely and totally devastated, and I think that's when it really hit us.
The walk from Pont Cassé into Roseau was the most difficult part. There were numerous landslides, just massive landslides all over the road. So sometimes we were knee deep in mud. We had met a couple of people coming the opposite way, and they had said, "Man, you cannot imagine what Roseau looks like." And when we got there, it was just mind-boggling to see this sort of devastation that had happened within a 6-hour span.
My name is Miranda Catherine Langley, which is my English name, but my Kalinago name is Ulika Petakaba, which means butterfly. And this area, as you can see, is the Karina Cultural Village. So we built it in preservation of our Kalinago heritage. So we share our home with the community. It's part of our contribution, it's part of our, giving back to, continuing the tradition with our people. Here we have the photos of the Karina Cultural Village before the hurricane, and this is our members. The group is dancing, doing performances. This is here the Karina Cultural Village. Here is Suriname. The group was in Suriname, and here's my sister, my baby sister. I call her my baby sister. She was a former Miss Kalinago, so during a pageant in Suriname, she represented Dominica with all the queens in Suriname, French Guiana. This tipi, was very special, and the people they appreciate it because over 100 years, the people of St. Kitts, they didn't see a tipi like that, a traditional house. In 2000, the group represented Dominica at Carifesta, the Caribbean Festival of Arts in St. Kitts and Nevis. Here, if you can look here, we have our trophy. We received the E.O. Libra trophy. Every year, in Dominica, the cultural department, and the National Cultural Council, they usually recognize cultural groups for their contribution to preserving culture in Dominica. We were lucky to, this one survived. Yeah.
Please bring my fall if I fall for you.
Dominica is a poor country in terms of comparison to developed countries, and the Kalinago territory is the poorest part of Dominica. The Kalinago people ended up in this part of Dominica because of the rugged terrain. The British, who were sort of chasing them out of every other place in Dominica that they had settled and had communities in Roseau, in Vieques, in Portsmouth, they were all run out of there and ended up on this really rugged Atlantic coastline where the European boats could not anchor, they couldn't come in. To get out of the areas where you could anchor and to get across the island was an enormous task.
Our forefathers fought the Europeans for almost 300 years. I mean, pushing them back into the sea because although they were the superpowers of Europe at that time, we stood up at one point in time and decided that enough is enough, so we should, fight for what is ours. And you would come into an area and you would see nothing. There was nothing there, only trees. But little do you know, there are hundreds of these guys. They are waiting. And when you step into those trees, that was it. No living human being would want to be a slave in his own country. We have to be proud of who we are as a people.
You know, when you're growing up in this type of environment, you don't really know you're poor. Yeah, because there's no exposure.
Right.
You've never seen television, there's no newspaper, there's no window in the outside world and nothing to compare your life to, right? And everybody around you is living the same sort of quality of life. So you don't know that you're living in real abject poverty.
Yeah, even with the measures of poverty, if you have family and you're well fed and you have
And
things
you
to
have
do, you're not
love.
poor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're here in your home, and this is where you were hiding out, riding the storm, as they say. The way your house is built uses traditional knowledge, and it was extraordinarily important during the hurricane. What makes these structures work so well? What does traditional knowledge bring to a hurricane?
Well, one of the things that when I was designing this building is I wanted it to have this sort of angular A-frame kind of look, and it is a traditional Kalinago style roof. So you'll see it has multiple very steep angles, and so the wind coming against it sort of just moves very quickly. And we used local lumber. So all of our lumber in the ceiling, the rafters are called balat. And balat is one of our really, really hardwoods. And we harvested it in the forest, and it has to be cut in a particular moon phase, because if you don't cut it on the right moon phase, then it's prone to have termites and stuff but if it's cut in the right moon phase, then it lasts forever. And balat is, you actually have to work with it when it's green. So you can actually, because once it dries and hardens, it's like steel. So traditional knowledge has sort of taught us some of the woods to use and the particular moon phase in which to cut them so that they can be preserved and last.
In a way, with climate change becoming so important, this is going to be essential for other people to.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a story about the building of the model village, which is right next to us. When they were building it, they hired a contractor who wasn't Kalinago. And they came in and started building and just were cutting logs in the forest, all different types of woods, and cutting it at any moon phase. And the local guys told them, said, listen, you can't do that. It's going to just rotten and it's not going to work. And they didn't pay attention. So they built the structures, and within a year or two, they were all rotting because they'd used the wrong type of lumber, they didn't cut it in the right moon phase. So traditional knowledge is something that is extremely important if you are going to use local materials. It is absolutely critically important to know which lumber to use and when to cut it.
My name is Charles Williams. I am the chief of the indigenous community of Dominica, the only surviving indigenous community in the Eastern Caribbean, and we have a population of about roughly 4,000 people. We have less than that presently residing because of people seeking greener pastures, looking for employment opportunities in the region and out in other areas in Dominica. So practically that is the Kalinago territory. We're located on the east-northeastern coast of Dominica, on the Atlantic side of the island, and we do practically sustainable agriculture for surviving. Now, what happened to us is, as the world would know, that in my lifetime of 67 years, I have seen for the very first time the most destructive hurricane ever, Hurricane Maria. And I saw Hurricane David in 1979 and I thought it was a serious hurricane. But when I saw what Maria delivered to us, I really, really, really was surprised to see how much damage that was created here. 95+% of the housing of the housing stock in the Kalinago territory have been destroyed. And agriculture was destroyed by 100%. And it is already said that next year's hurricane season might be even more active than this year's hurricane season. And if we are to face Category 5 hurricane, 200+ miles hurricane speed winds, then we need to have solid structures that can stand up to the forces of those hurricanes. Ready? Facility, dairy, milk, corn milk, what's that? Sugar, salt, biscuits, evaporated milk, oils, lentils, peas. What do we have? Oats, ramen, baking powder, matches, rice. So practically everything is in there. Central government is playing a very pivotal role in trying to assimilate the people. They use the political powers, they use the state economy, they do everything to divide and rule the people here, and that's a big problem that we're having right now. One of the concerns is that central government came through the Kalinago territory and they just tried to build some houses for political support. They in fact just picked up random people, make them into contractors and put them on the houses, and we see the result, all the houses are damaged.
There's all this talk now about climate change and protecting nature and doing all of these things. If they had simply listened to indigenous knowledge and followed indigenous practices with dealing with the environment and dealing with people really, maybe we wouldn't have any of these issues with climate change in the world.
Our parents always knew exactly, the ancestors would always know when some bad weather would be coming, because they would look at the ants, the cloud, the birds, and that sort of stuff, so we knew exactly something bad was coming. We as First Peoples, we are still under the laws of the country. You have to obey the laws, when to hunt, when to fish, what to have, what not to have. You have to pay license to the government for your own liquor, things you sell within the territory. You have to pay, vehicle license, shop license, and all those things. All these monies goes to central government, and then central government in return, you have to ask again that they can give you some money to do certain projects in your community. So, some of the things that we would like to see is that all the taxes that is being collected within our territory should be as part of our tribal councils and funds, so that we also could develop our territory. So right now we are still struggling as First Peoples in our own country. Everything that we have to do You know, we have to go for the government, we have to go for a political system, and not right. I mean, to us, it is just outrageous. I mean, you have a lot of influences all around. You have the influence of outsiders, people from neighboring communities, people, the influence of the media and all that sort of stuff. We have done a lot to really re-educate our people and to really cause them to reconnect with our past. Over the years, I think we have been doing pretty good. Yeah, because when I was growing up as a young boy, it was much different. It was so bad that you could not speak your own language. You would be beaten. If you had to go to school, you had to speak only English. Whether you speak Creole or whether you speak any other language, you would be beaten because the system was only there to deculturalize you.
It's a Kalinago dictionary which was written by Douglas Taylor, which was an anthropologist. The first one, Mano Lia Nira. Mano is my name. Yeah. And then Mano Ayatina, I am Mano. Like me, I would say my name is Miranda, I'd say Ayatina Miranda. Chesentina Buni, I love you. Chesentina Nuni, do you love me? And Anuku, Tina, I am ill. So from the dictionary, we was able to take the information and pass it on, teaching the children. So every summer we'd have the Kalinago language class.
There are a couple of tribes in Guyana and Belize whose language, they still speak the native language, and who linguists have recognized is very close or the same as the Kalinago language. And one of the things that I was saying to the government is they should create a project where we could do some exchanges, maybe bring a couple of the people from Guyana, bring them into our schools, let them teach, maybe send us some of our teachers over to Guyana, let them learn so they can come back and teach our children. But it would be a really beautiful and powerful thing to revitalize the language and to learn. It's such a loss for our tribe and our people.
There's a wonderful little site on Instagram. Do you know Instagram?
Mm-hmm.
And it's called Gwich'in, Word of the Day.
Gwich'in.
And the Gwich'in people in Alaska or in Canada, just decided they're going to start teaching on Instagram and social media where young people are.
Is that right?
And so they have little pictures of the
Yes.
word and a Gwich'in Word of the Day.
That's something we should look at. That's the way to. The young people are definitely connected to social media, so it'd be a great teaching tool, I suppose.
And fun.
And fun, right?
Together we rise with love in our eyes. Talk of changes, we can change us.
The amazing thing to me in looking at this village for tourists is how little damage there is. This is amazing after a major hurricane.
I am surprised because I asked one of my friends after the storm, how was Barana? He said, Barana it's okay. The structure didn't fall and it's only one or two little damage, and I'm just surprised because to face a category 5 and to see the structures well, good and okay, this is proof that that is the way that is the way we should build our traditional houses. That's why our ancestors used to build this type of structure before hurricanes and storms. It would protect them, protect their family. I guess this is a message, this is a plain example to tell our people and native people, the people of the world, that the traditional way is the best, you know. That's the best way you could to build your traditional, especially in global warming now.
Now here's where you get your picture taken for Instagram to tell the world about what this means.
Yeah, as you can see, it says, I was here at Kalinago Baranaute, you know, in the Kalinago territory, Dominica.
Let's take an Instagram.
All right, let's go.
Our people have been challenged by far worse than a hurricane. We have had colonization and extermination and disease, and so we'll build back. We'll build back.
It's now June and a new hurricane season. The Kalinago territory remains without electricity. Food and housing are still in short supply. The territory lost all of its agriculture and most of its jobs. Chief Williams recently had a stroke and he is now recovering off island. Meanwhile, Niche Obu is the acting chief. So much of the world's attention is focused on Puerto Rico and the other islands impacted by Hurricane Maria. There has been no spotlight, none of the attention that brings international aid. Yet, the Kalinago people are resilient. They find a way to thrive in their homelands. I'm Mark Trahant, and this is Wassaja.
Till they see the world through your eyes.